So good morning, everyone. Welcome to session 3 for Management 224. We have a special treat for you today. Mr. Brendan MacNeill will be our guest speaker, talking specifically about his experiences with safety at PCAP. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brendan, and he can do a better introduction.
Good morning. Thanks, Elaine. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Brendan MacNeill. I'm with Field Safety at PCAP. Been at PCAP for a little over 6 years. I've been in the health and safety field for 30 years. When I say health and safety field, I've always been in health and safety, always had my hand in the pot there, but I've been in different roles in management, from maintenance manager to environmental health and safety manager, a fleet manager, a project manager, all kinds. Worked for 3 different Fortune 500 companies. Started out my career with General Motors right out of college in Saginaw, Michigan. And basically worked for 3 Fortune 500s. And the one thing throughout my career, though, that I've really prided myself on is world-class communication and organization skills. No matter where you're at and what you're doing in life, doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in government work, if you're in the private sector, consulting, world-class communication and organization skills are very vital actually the key to success, no matter where you go. And if you have those skills, they are going to help prevent or mitigate conflict. Let's just face it, if the more details you have in terms of what you're trying to roll out in terms of expectations and tasks and all that, the better off you're going to be and the less room for ambiguity. So again, in a nutshell, those are the 2 things that I found to be key contributors to success for me in the last 30 years. And again, it all falls in line with best practices. What are the best practices? Those things. Well versed in it. Not saying I'm an expert at it, but I know what works for me. And part of what you'll hear from me today is a lot of my personal experience based on the last 30 years. It may not all pertain to you, but I'm going to throw out some ideas, give you practical examples, and hopefully that'll stimulate you a little bit in terms of what you can use to mitigate these potential conflicts out in the field, whether it's in the immediate future or way down the road, or maybe you'll think, hey, what could I have done in the past? So our learning objectives for the next 2 hours are going to be to discuss examples of conversations, crucial conversations that pertain to conflict, not necessarily safety, but conflict in general. And then I'll describe the 3 generic types of conflict, and then present tips for success, my personal tips for success in resolving conflict, things that I think that will help. And I know you've heard some of these terms before, and we'll get to that, but I'm going to give you my summary of what works. Any questions thus far? Okay. So we're going to start off with conflict categories. There's 3 of those. It's task, style, and personality. So the first one, task-based conflicts. Conflicts about the task. Why, what, and how to do it. I came up with some possible contributors for the task-based conflicts in terms of, what provokes these things, what brings these things on. And actually with the first example that I have, I'd like to bring up Kyle Hughes and talk for a minute, and actually just sit or stand here with me. But it's about work orders not being detailed and leaving too much ambiguity. I'm sure everybody has experience with work orders here. Robert, I know you do. And I want Kyle to kind of lend his expertise, what he's seen at PCAP in terms of this, and where he's seen conflict and what they've done to resolve conflict. So
it's not uncommon. Again, reporters that come in, everybody can say their idea of what is done. Some will come in and just say leak. But I have no idea where this is. It's a 48. Marcia's familiar with this. The contact numerous people in our community, figure out exactly what's going on. Other people give a whole bunch of detail but tell you nothing. But in the same sense, we start to check it. We always run up, especially on planning packages. The safest thing we can do is give you every bit of detail to do a job. There's no question. Everybody in the review process sees exactly what's going to happen if you do it the way we right. At the same time, the way I'm going to do a job and the way you're going to do a job, we're both going to get it done. We're both going to do it safe, but we're not going to do it the same. So you may not like the package, but it'll work. On the other hand, because we are trying to give you all of that detail, creates a natural feedback where people don't want that. They want the latitude to go and do the job as they see fit, as long as they meet the requirements that the site has. So what we've done for a lot of that is we've standardized whole work with other groups like safety and quality, environmental. Make sure that when we give you a package, it's as consistent of a product between planner A, B, and C as possible. We're going to give you the latitude to you need to without telling you exactly how to do it. And we do that with the understanding that you were hired on because you were qualified in whatever your craft or trade is. It should still be an expectation. It's hard to explain to people. Yeah, I understand that you know how to do it globally. There's a form that you have to fill out while you do it to make sure that you don't miss it. Understand you know how to bolt up a flank. Tell you just to make sure you know how to torque wires. If you're not here, those wires go back on. Somebody else needs documentation to tell them where those wires landed. Fill out this paperwork, please. You put too much detail in it, he's going to complain and say you're tying my hands. The moment we go too more in detail, something happens, first thing we hear, well, this work order didn't tell us what to do. We have to explain to people that you got to live somewhere in the middle here. And not everybody's always happy to hear about that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. This is really good insight into the work order process. I've been dealing with MacNeill for 30 years. Actually started out my career at GM and working with MacNeill right out the gate. And I've seen the evolution of MacNeill and the work order process, and it's really been streamlined. And I think we utilize it very well. I've seen a large improvement just in 6 years in our process, and it's thanks to people like Kyle and that go out and work with the different departments and try to mitigate all that ambiguity in there. And again, try and find that middle ground that makes everyone happy. Again, you're not going to make everyone happy. That's just a rule of thumb. Never going to happen. But if we, cater to the majority, then. So another additional example of potential conflict with task-based lack of proper orientation and refresher training. There is a disconnect. What's being said down at Wave 4 versus what's happening at the plant. These are not. Do You ever see it? Almost every day. Yeah, serious disconnect. We in the safety department have been working on trying to gap that, to do a lot of gapping there. But the thing is, when you lay out expectations at Jetway 4 and they don't meet what you're doing at the plant, then now you set yourself up for potential failure because they're not getting the same message. So that is an example where conflict could arise with plants. You're going to come to the plant and say, well, hey, this is the way I was told to do it. Now you're telling me to do it this way. What gives? So work on that. That gapping has to be all about continuous improvement integration. Here's another one. Lack of management involvement or gross negligence by management. I've seen this during the course of my career where you know what needs to be done or should know what needs to be done, but yet you're not getting the full support from the top brass. And that leads to some serious issues, especially when they turn the other cheek, say, I don't know. There again, it goes to leadership. Everything has to come from the top down. If you don't have the support from the top down, you're going to fail. That's a given, no matter where you're at, what you're doing in life. Definitely. And then again, expectations not clearly defined. Talk about this again. I like to use the 1 minute manager principle. Everybody here with 1 minute manager? Being the manager should be the one manager, or I like to use the term leader. A leader is somebody that people will follow where they normally wouldn't go. Okay? So I like calling myself a leader. But the whole principle of 1 minute manager is this, is that you set your people up for success. In other words, you lay out all the expectations, all the details. And again, it leads to success. You know, you don't even any questions or any ambiguity of what you're telling them or asking them to do. But in turn, you ask them to give feedback on, you know, what they expect of you, the leader. They want to know that too. They want to say, hey, well, we expect this, this, and this. It's got to be a mutual thing. It's got to be a team thing. And then let your people go. Let them do their thing once you set them up for success. And as they're out doing their thing, you're going to have those that rise to the top, those that are kind of in the middle, and those that are lagging. Ones that are lagging, you want to work with, try to bring them up to at least middle, in the middle. Okay, so they're performing, you know, at a decent level, but you want to work with those people, and it's a continuous process. That's what a real good leader does. And again, I attribute it to the 1 minute manager principle. So any questions, concerns about that? Do you agree though that should be the way things should be done to mitigate any type of task-based conflict? You know, those things, you know, it's all in the orientation, it's all in the training, it's setting people up, it's setting that. I like to use the pyramid analogy. To build a pyramid, you have to have a solid base. Okay, if your pyramid does not have a solid base and solid mortar holding it together, then going from horizontal to vertical is going to be a waste of time because it's going to crumble. So the base is you have all the pieces in place, but the mortar is the people. People are the mortar of that, holding it together. But if you don't set the base right, then again, it's all for naught. Next type is manager style conflict. Conflict with one supervisor style. For example, a manager can be type A and very teleassertive when the employee wants only direction and feels they're being told what to do. So again, I came up with possible scenarios or root causes for this. Supervisor manager does not have an open door policy. That could lead to definite conflict. Why? Why would that be? Can anybody tell me why? Pretty simple, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't feel comfortable talking to them. You never know the needs of your people, because they're never going to bring them to you.
And if you have conflict between employees, they're not gonna, neither one would bring that to the manager. So it would be just a not productive environment.
Right. Exactly. Supervisor or manager does not keep an open mind. Have we seen that before? Have you ever seen
I
this?
think I've been guilty of this before. Being very narrow-minded on what I thought was right and not being capable of hearing a different opinion at the moment.
Mhm.
I think I've been guilty of it.
Yeah, and why was that? What was the premise for that? What was the premise for your belief that you were going to not listen to anything?
I don't think it's that I refused to. I just think I just wasn't capable at the moment. I had a clear vision of how it needed to happen. This was the right thing to do.
Okay.
I don't think I was blatantly refusing to.
Right.
Just continue to argue my point. No, this is the right way because of this reason.
You were probably talking to an Ohio State fan.
Well, for me, especially with work control, before I left work control, I mean, I was there when work control started at PCAP. And I helped build the program and build Maximo and everything.
Mhm.
And so I felt very protective of it. And
Okay.
so when someone had different ways of doing it or wanted to turn it upside down, I felt they were attacking my baby, you know?
Go play in my sandbox.
I was playing my sandbox.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
it was, and it was hard to get over that initial, you know.
I get that too. And me coming from a general industry safety background and coming to government work was a lot different. And it was a complete paradigm shift for me. And I'm not going to lie, I had to make some serious adjustments there too. It was not easy. And then having to learn to play with everybody, work with everyone, because I'm used to doing everything in health and safety. And then I come over to the government sector where we have branches of this, and this, all within safety. But out in the general industrial world, the safety person does everything. So it was a difference for me. So I had to learn to give and take. That was a big shocker for me, honestly. And next example is supervisor manager wants to rule with an iron fist. It's my way or the highway, right? And I think that goes back to not keeping an open mind, but you look at some of the older school management folks out there, especially in the general industrial world, it's that way. I worked in automotive and oil and gas, and then I was working with the old timers that are used to resolving conflict through verbal and sometimes physical means. That was the thing back then in the 1950s and 60s. You ought to hear all the stories from the automotive sector, the way they used to handle things. It was not right. And it's true though. And when I worked in oil and gas for National Oil of Arco, I worked with some of the roughnecks. These are the guys that were roughnecks on the oil rigs, and now they're division managers. Boy, you talk about crude. Wow. Yeah, it was their way or the highway. So anybody have any other examples of that where you've seen that? Natural gas. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay, and here's a good one. Possible assumption of who the supervisor manager is versus who they really are. Again, it goes to perception versus fact. You might have a manager that seems gruff on the exterior or is gruff on the exterior, but inside they're actually a really good person. So the thing with that though is we have to give everybody a chance, a fair shake. We should never make these preconceived notions or assumptions about who somebody is. Give everybody a fair shake. Because if we don't do that, then you're bound for some type of conflict. Agreed? So, anybody have anything else to add to this part as far as tasks go? Do you know of any others, or can you think of any other possible contributors or root causes?
I think you get it pretty well covered. I think those are a really good, valid point.
Thank you. Yeah, again, these are all coming from my experience and what I know. This is not taken from a textbook. If I'm missing anything, I'm encouraging interaction based on your experiences. Again, this is all coming from my 30 years. This is not taken from any textbook. This is just stuff I just wrote down. So if you, at any time, just feel free to add, okay?
Well, there are generational conflicts too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that feeds into just about every one of those.
Yeah, it does. Yep. So all I'm doing is trying to get you to think about these possible root causes. It doesn't mean this is the say-all to everything. There's potential more contributors, but it's just getting our mind thinking about, hey, what could it be and what can I do to mitigate those things from ever happening? That's what it's all about. Just stimulate your mind. And the third one, this is a biggie. Personality conflicts. Conflicts where personalities clash, especially with peers. And I came up with some possible root cause examples for this. Number one, egos. Oh, man, don't let go of my ego, right? True?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Egos, yeah, by all means. Anybody have any classic examples of that?
Well, I think the biggest example of this is when people get feedback, right? Their egos stand in the way of receiving that feedback, and really taking a good look at yourself, what you're doing, and adjusting to. I think egos stop people from doing that because it turns around as, well, why would you give me feedback when you got this to work on, right? Or
Right.
you know.
Exactly. Yep, good point. Different work backgrounds. I've mentioned this before. General industry versus government versus consulting. So different backgrounds. That definitely lends itself to potential conflict, does it not? Just your training, your whole vision, what you believe in, your cultural beliefs, that can stem from those three, and there's more than that. Agree? Different ethnic backgrounds, most definitely. We all come from different parts of the country to different parts of the world where we have different cultures and where those beliefs, the standards are ingrained in who we are. And those we bring with us everywhere we go. Doesn't matter what you're doing, work, play, anything. Those become a part of who we are. So that in itself will definitely lend itself to potential conflict. But what can we do in this case? What can we do to mitigate that? Just like just about everything. What can we do to mitigate it? Talk about it. Open mind. Exactly. Exactly.
Get to know the person.
There you go. Get to know the person. Exactly. Exactly. And not just because HR says so. Okay? But because we want to do it. Oh, I love this one. Difference in levels of education. And before I say anything more about this, I have to cite a quote from Elon Musk. Elon Musk once said, "I hate when people confuse education with intelligence. You can have a bachelor's degree and still be an idiot." Okay? Just because Elaine, I know you have a PhD, so I'm not picking on you. You definitely deserve that. You don't deserve to be picked on. But no, there's that notion that just because, I have a master's in business administration, I know everything and anything there is to know about running a business. No, you don't. That sets the foundation for you. That gives you the foundation in which to launch from, but it's all about hands-on practical experience, folks. We all know that. I say a degree is my dad always told me a degree is just a stepping stone to help you get your foot in the door into places where you maybe normally wouldn't be able to get your foot in the door. but it doesn't make you any smarter or better than anyone else. That's just one of those things. It's one of those, it's a norm in society to build it. But yeah, it goes back to keeping an open mind. I mean, there's some brilliant people out there, some of the most brilliant people in the world that never even got past 5th grade. You know, some of the greatest minds ever. So let's be careful with that one.
They know how it should happen. They don't necessarily know how it actually happens.
Go. Kyle, I'm glad you brought that up. So what the standard was at General Motors, when they hire in their engineers and anybody and people like me, you know what they do? The first thing, so they say, okay, Brendan, we're looking at you as a potential down the road candidate to be a general supervisor or superintendent of health and safety or environmental. But before we do any of that, we're going to let you spend 4, 6, 8 years on the floor as a supervisor, production supervisor, as a maintenance supervisor, as a quality person. They do that with all their engineers, everybody. They give everyone time on the floor to learn the culture, what it's about, to learn where this column is so that this 55-inch piece of ductwork isn't going to be able to run through that, but needs to go around that. Gives you time on the floor to start to realize, to absorb these things, and makes you a better person as an engineer, say 6 years down the road. So that's their practice, and I loved it because it instilled in all the new hires, the engineers, and that, you know, what really goes on the floor rather than what goes on in a textbook. And it lends itself to what you're saying, Kyle. That's good. The military background versus non-military background. Is there, think that that's potential for?
Oh, yes.
Have we seen that at PCAT?
Oh, yes.
Where you have a military versus a non-military, just the way of thinking, the way people are trained. You know, the one thing I've always heard, and it's not, I'm not picking, I love and support the men and women, both past and present, and in the military, but you know, you often hear about people being trained a certain way, getting programmed a certain way, and then getting out of the military life and then coming back to civilian life and not being able to deprogram. You hear that a lot. It's out there. It's more prevalent than what you think. But most everybody adjusts well, but there's times when you see that conflict. I personally experienced that with one of my bosses, previous bosses, that had that way of thinking and just couldn't get into the mainstream. It was still bing, 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 when it should have been bing, 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 bing. But that's the difference. But you have to keep an open mind and understand and keep open lines of communication to try to understand and find the common ground, right? And last but not least, gender. Examples of that, Beth? Have you seen it where there's a potential conflict just because one's a male or one's a female? Differences of opinion?
IT obviously isn't as gender or maintenance or I definitely had more mansplaining in my
I've spent my entire career in a male-dominated environment. I actually worked with a Navy chief that thought women had no business on a ship at all and told me that to my face. It's just something that you got to deal with.
Yeah, deal with it. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if Kyle agrees with me, but when I worked at General Motors, and Robert, I don't know if you agree with me either, but.
I don't.
Okay. Yeah. You know, some of our best of the at General Motors were women. They really are. Very technical, very sequential in their thought process, more so than males. And that's actually.
Women are, I think, naturally more detail oriented.
They are, and especially with something electrical, That's really comes in handy, but honestly, that's the truth. So I don't,
But you know what's really sad?
what's that?
Us and here are the ones sitting here, yeah, we just have to suck it up instead of saying maybe the mail industry might be a little more open-minded and inclusive
There you go.
instead of us just sitting here and saying, we just have to suck it up.
And I agree. That's why we're talking about this, because, you know, the one common theme I'm hearing already is open mind, open mind, open mind.
And we
Right.
do have different ways of approaching things. I mean,
Right.
I tend to be very hesitant when I was when I was on my tools about troubleshooting and fixing things because I'm scared to death of breaking something.
Right.
And the men that I've worked with have no fear of that. We were working on a gas valve in Pine Bluff, and we couldn't get it to calibrate, no matter what. Well, we can get the low end, we can get the high end, we just couldn't get both ends to calibrate. And my partner just stuck his screwdriver in there and started screwing and unscrewing stuff, and pretty soon the entire guts of the valve just fell out onto the grating. And I'm like, well, it looks like we're replacing it now. So calibration done, get a new one. You know, and it's so
You force it, if it breaks, it needs to replace it.
I've seen women more careful, but then again, I've seen women, and I hate working with women. No offense. Being around men my entire life, I'm used to dealing with men. But I've seen women, and I hate them when they reinforce that stereotype. Oh, I'm helpless. I can't do this. Can you carry it? Oh, I can't. I broke a nail. I mean, when I was on the ship, I'd be lifting stuff and moving stuff around in the calibration lab, and the guys would be like, "Can we get that?" I was like, "If I need your help, I'll ask for it." But then there's another one. Yeah, I can't reach this, you know. And I hate those women because they just make it worse for the rest of it. But those are the ones that we fixate on, the things that reinforce our emotions. So they make it worse for the rest of us.
And there's been times where I have just been the damsel in distress just to be like, okay, fine. It'll shut you up. Go ahead and I'll fix it later.
And I brought up a few of these personality conflict examples or potential contributors to kind of make people feel a little bit uncomfortable, just because it's good because it stimulates everyone and gets everybody to think from a different perspective. You know, we shouldn't be able to sugarcoat things. I mean, I'm not trying to breach any HR boundaries by whatsoever, and also I volunteered today, so they can't do anything. But anyways, no, but it's good. We need to talk about it, be more open-minded, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, is to stimulate that and get you to think outside the box, because it's the real world. Again, we go by what's perception versus fact.
Right.
Yeah, and again, but it goes back to what can we do? Be more open-minded. We need to do that.
Right.
Exactly. So that was the whole premise for this. Any other potential contributors or personality conflicts that I didn't talk about? Or anything that runs parallel?
Thinking this whole scheme of these courses that we've taken, it's in the back of everyone's mind. You know, is an entirely different mindset. It's in what we've learned. I mean, I come up from the Navy, I did 20 years in the Navy, so there's my personal mindset there. We didn't have two-man teams where you have to work with a partner. You go out and you do your job, get your job done, you know.
Yeah.
Taking this mindset is going to be an entirely different paradigm shift to going to another industry.
It is.
And trying, well, that's not the way we did it at PWare.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't know if anybody heard some of the conflicts from the Navy that and you were in boot camp, if your company commander got in your face, you pull your blue card, I'm getting stressed. And the company commander was supposed to take a step back, somebody else come in to resolve the
I thought
conflict.
that was the chair force.
I think they all did it.
All the branches of service at one point.
They put it in
Have
When-
done-
the yellow card.
When I went into boot camp, they could still open palm hit you.
They couldn't when I went in, but they would get in your face
They
and
would get in
scream
your
and
face
spit
and
on you.
Oh, I'm getting stressed, pull my blue card.
Yeah.
Somebody else is supposed to, and these recruits, when they graduate boot camp, still carry that blue card, and they go out in the fleet. Oh, I'm getting stressed, you're telling me to unclog a commode. What? Well, that's your job. You know, or, what do you mean I have to sweep and swab and paint what? Oh, no, the blue card doesn't count here. So when we take this mentality that we've learned at MacNeill somewhere else, it works if you go nuclear or DOE.
Mhm. But generally,
It's not gonna work when you're out on a construction
No.
site.
no. We used to have bets in Pine Bluff when someone left, how long it would take for them to get fired from their first job.
Because
For the next job, we had
Yeah.
we had an electrician quit and went to work at one of the paper mills
Mhm.
nearby. And we bet 6 months. It took them 3 months. They were, there was an area that had a big sign outside it that said respirator required beyond this point. And they were gonna send him in to work in there and he didn't have a respirator. And he's like, I'm not going in there without a respirator. And his boss is like, yeah, you will go in there in respirator or you'll be looking for another job.
we'll
And
find
it-
someone who.
yeah, and 3 months is all he lasted in general industry.
I
So.
think it really depends on where you go. It doesn't have to be nuclear or DOE.
Right.
It depends on the culture of the company that you go to.
Right, and like, I was gonna continue with that exact train of thought. There are companies that are coming up now in that
Mhm.
mindset
Yes.
and
Yeah.
try to instill that.
Mhm. And, you know, that's good. And what I'm going to do in a little bit is the last part, the last segment of my presentation is to give you tips on resolving or mitigating any potential conflict with best practices. And those are things you can plug and play anywhere you go. It doesn't matter if you're in the government sector or if you're in general industry, if you're in consulting. These are going to be tips for succeeding and resolving and mitigating conflict anywhere you go. So that's where this is all leading. This is great because I love this interaction and that's what we want. But in the end, we're going to tie it all together and what we can do and plug and play it. No matter where we're at in life or where we're going, it's going to work. It'll work as long as you practice it. That's the whole thing. And you talked about the blue card, Robert. I have an example of a blue card that I'm going to give you. It's not Navy, but it runs parallel with what you're saying, and I'll get to that in one of my real life examples here in a little bit. And it deals with the union, United Auto Workers. I was management. I had skilled and unskilled, 107 people working for me. But every time, there's times when I would say, hey, you need to do this, need to do this. Oh, I can't do that. That's against the contract. Guess what? I'm management, have a right of assignment. I know that contract from front to back, inside out, backwards and forwards. Yes, I do have that right. And I'm not putting you in an unsafe condition, or I'm not asking you to do something unsafe behavior-wise. So yes, I can tell you to do that. Don't be throwing your little blue card just because you don't want to work. No, I'm not going to take that. But I'm going to bring up these examples to show you that yes, depending, like Kyle said, depends on where you're going, what environment you're working in. A union environment is a lot different than a non-union environment. I'm going to tell you that. Anybody that's had experience, it's true. So you have to learn to adapt. But if you use the basic principles for success in terms of mitigating conflict, and that it'll work. Again, it doesn't matter where you're at. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I wanted to prepare you for what's to come. So anything more on the 3 different types of tasks? Pretty well said on that? Okay. Now we're going to get into some practical examples. 3 examples of my personal experience over 30 years. Oh, and I was supposed to do that, Elaine, but you got me. So The first one that I have for you is General Motors. My General Motors experience. I was at GM for 8 years. It's my first 8 years out of college. I interned there with health and safety and environmental activities. And so what they did is they hired me on direct, and of course, like they do with most people, most new hires, they put me into supervision right away because they wanted me to get experience on the floor. I was not only a facility maintenance supervisor, but I was also a shift management designated health and safety rep as well, over 1,000 people. So I had 107 direct reports, and I had 1,000 people that I was over in terms of management. And I also had a UAW health and safety counterpart as well. But running 107 people is a tall task, okay? Especially when you have skilled and non-skilled. Well, one of the things we did weekly was we had a weekly safety meeting. It was 107 guys. Well, and gals. It's guys and gals. And one particular example, one time, I was getting ready to present. It was on a Thursday night. That's actually when I was on night shift, on third shift. And for 6 years. But back to the example. Getting ready, I was up in front of the entire crew, getting ready to present the weekly safety topic. And I had some banter going on with a few of the employees up front and just talking about general safety topics and, hey, how are you doing? You know, saying I care about you, you know, because I did. I really cared for my work. I really cared for my workers. I took good care of them because they took good care of me. But for whatever reason, a sweeper driver stood up and looked right at me and said, I don't need this bull crap. I looked right at him, said, what are you talking about? He goes, I don't need to be listening to you in this bull crap. I'm here for a safety topic. I said, well, right there. Started a conflict, do we not? Did you start the conflict? Did I start it? No, I didn't. He was just mad because I was working, I was a team player and I was working with my employees and showing them how much I cared, but he didn't like it for whatever reason. And he started to walk right out of the room. And I said, stop. I said, you get back here right now. I said, it is your assignment to be here right now. You step out of this room and leave my safety topic, you're on notice of penalty. It's an environment, United Auto Workers. Straight out the door, just leaves. But I can't sit there and follow him because I need to roll out my safety topic. So I get done with my safety topic and everything. It's about a half an hour later. And I have 3 of the other sweeper drivers out in the plant trying to find him. But man, mind you, this is a large facility. And I'm talking sits on 600 plus acres. There's 10 stories to this facility in some parts, 10 stories. And there's basement down below where we have the open drag flask going for cooling. This is, we're making engine blocks and heads. So it's like a maze down there. There's several places where somebody can go and hide, even with the sweeper. Okay, a little Elgin sweeper. And can't find them anywhere. I'm trying to call the radio, and so I call, I do what I'm supposed to do according to protocol. I didn't lose composure. That's key here in a conflict. I didn't lose composure. I had called the committee man to let him know that I had put him on notice as he left my safety meeting. I called plant security. I called my boss at home, told him what happened, and then I called one of the general supervisors out on the floor. So I had my bases covered. And then I also informed my garage that if this employee was to come into the cleaning bay where they have to clean the sweepers, I want to know about it. I got to find out where this guy's at. Well, the entire shift, 8 hours, we could not locate him. And I had General Millwright, a general electrician, everybody looking for him, could not find him. But I knew that he had to come up at the end of the shift and clean up his sweeper, because that was protocol, and before the next shift. So half an hour before the end of the shift, I was waiting in the service garage in the cleaning bay. Lo and behold, who shows up? Sweeper driver. I call him unruly sweeper driver. It's in the bay. I step in there. I got two of my garage mechanics are standing behind me, two big Alabama boys standing behind me. And they're like this, standing behind me. Hey, we're not gonna let anything happen to our supervisor. This guy's a big dude too. He's 6'5", about 300 pounds. He's a pretty big dude. So I get in there and I politely say, "Where have you been?" "It's none of your effing business where I've been," is what he told me. Again, potential for conflict right there and then. Did not let those words get to me. I maintain composure, right? Maintaining composure. I said, "You know you're on notice of penalty, right?" I said, "You went AWOL the entire shift. You not only left my safety meeting, which was a direct violation of orders, of task." He knows what his task was. It's a given. You have to be there. You can't. It's mandatory. It's not optional. And then he didn't perform his regular sweeper route. He wouldn't hit. So there's number two, failure to do his job. His job that he knew full well what to do, where to go, the whole 9 yards. Okay. Now things get nasty. I can't tell you everything he told me because it gets real nasty. But he basically threatened my life. He threatened my wife's life and my little baby daughter's life right in front of me and the two other employees. Okay. So I called one of my management counterparts out to the garage and to be there with me because he got there within 5 minutes, and then I went up to the employee and I looked him in the eye and his eyes were bloodshot. He was higher than a kite. I knew it. He was smoking dope on the job. And actually, he probably was smoking dope, but I know he was smoking dope before he entered the workplace. But I didn't know that until 3 days after the event. Got a management rep there with me as protocol. I said, "Well, you need to go up to medical right now for a drug test." More expletives from him. So, you can go. That's basically what he told me. Nope. Refusal. Now refusal. That's an automatic positive. Automatic. There's no give or take on that. It's automatic. You're guilty. You're positive. Now you're in the third. You got the third violation. Then on to the fourth. You threatened my life. So I called the Saginaw County Sheriff's Department. Get them on the phone. Say, "Hey, this guy's threatened my life, my daughter's life, my wife's life. Need to arrest this guy when he punches out." Everything I could, covered all my bases, followed protocol, followed procedure. And I did not deviate from that. And I did not let his actions evoke a negative response in me. Kept my composure. Okay. Conflict resolution. Go back to Sulu, speak up, listen up. I'm speaking up. He's listening up. I can only do and say what I can do as a professional, but I can't control his response. Can't do that. So, but I did everything I could to maintain composure. So he punches out. He doesn't even go to medical. He just cleans the sweeper, puts it away, goes to his locker, punches right out the gate. And I had notified security, but security themselves physically cannot stop him from punching out because they're not the cops, right? Employee hits the parking lot, gets in his red CK Chevy pickup truck, gets out on the main road, sheriff's department's been pulling them over. Top hot is test. He popped pot for marijuana, THC. He's taken to jail, and I press charges for actually threatening me, my wife, and my daughter to kill us. And I actually had the 2 UAW guys that were with me actually back up my story. They said, this is crossing the line. I'm a union brother, but when they cross the line and threaten the life of my boss and his wife and daughter, that's too much. I love union, but that's way too much. You know the summary of this story though, what happened? So he gets a month off, right? He's in jail for a week, gets another remaining 3 weeks off work. But union negotiated him all of his back pay for 4 weeks. But also let him come back without any disciplinary action at all. He got 4 weeks back pay. So he was on vacation essentially for 4 weeks and came back. And you think that hurt a little bit? Yeah, it did. But there's nothing I could do. All I could do though was follow the rules of the road, follow the procedures, the protocol that are in place. That's all I could do. So with that in mind, which one of the tasks do you think that falls under that we just previously talked about, the three? What do you think it falls under? And another question for you, could I have done anything differently? Or should I have done anything differently in that situation?
Always have to go to what I should have.
Yeah.
I think this is like, but
I share that board with a chip holder.
And so what was the root cause of that? It was the trigger, back to triggers. We go back to trigger recognition, which also falls in this, is he was acting different than he normally does. Normally he was actually fairly friendly.
Must have got some bad meat because you ain't supposed to.
Yeah, well, that's we had a running joke about that for a while, but yeah, the guys were saying I don't buy the wheat from Bay City, Michigan, but yeah, but that's just an example, and I'm giving you tangible examples, folks, of really what happens out there. This isn't textbook. This is real life stuff. Just to get you to think, but you can't. It's hard to rehearse or practice real life. We can talk about it. We can talk about potential conflicts and this and that, but we have to be ready. We have to expect the unexpected, and we have to be able to maintain composure and to follow the rules of the road. And especially if you were in a leadership position, that's essential that you lead by example, because everybody's going to be watching you. And trust me, everybody was watching me there in what I did, and I handled it well. And I was still fairly young in my career, but I did everything by the book. So I share that with you because that's a classic example of what can happen in a union environment. Now over to another, essentially a union environment, different, but oil and gas. Working for National Oil of Arco. So I started out my career with NOV over here on site at the steel mill here in Pueblo. We actually had a small, we're a part, in NOV, the division I worked for was NOV Tuboscope. So we actually inspect pipe, we coat pipe, that's for down the hole for the oil and gas industry. And I took over the safety program here in Pueblo at the steel mill, and right at the ship, turned us from worst to first in 6 months, had an unannounced OSHA inspection, and after the an unannounced wall-to-wall OSHA inspection, first in the division history of having an inspection with 0 citations. So what does good work get you? When you do good work, what happens? You get more work. So corporate and my boss said, hey, if Brendan can do this up in Pueblo, he can do it anywhere. It's a plug and play. So let's bring him down to Houston, Texas, to corporate, And let's let him take on 5 of our worst facilities down here and do the exact same thing, but in a condensed version of what he did. So basically, it was over the course of 5 months. I was down in Houston, and I was going to these 5 different facilities, and I was performing audits, talking to the employees, talking to the manager, trying to find out what's going on, get a pulse on the place, right? This is a directive right from the president of our division. This is a directive, and actually came from the CEO of our company. He said we need to figure out what's going on in these divisions with these low performers, these ones that are something's happening here. We're getting constant citations and this and that, and the employee morale's low. Let's figure out what's going on here. Let's get to the root cause. So let's bring in MacNeill to do that. And they called me the hitman. Bad term. But anyways, I was able to go into 3 of the facilities and work with management and the workers on the floor and get to the basis of what was causing a lot of these safety related issues. And I had complete buy-in, teamwork from every full support to mitigate these issues, to bring up the safety performance, to bring up the morale, to do all those things. But I was 3 of the 5. The other 2 facilities, it's easy. I was met head on with 2 former, who are they, Kyle? 2 former roughnecks that were division managers. In other words, they managed that facility. You know what was happening there? I did the whole thing there. And I gave them my complete review and what we need to do in terms of corrective action and your top 5 safety violations. Gave them everything, a complete report. And of course, this report went to the head of Tuboscope and actually went to the CEO of NOV and went to my boss. And in our division, we had 27 different plants in the central region. So we had 27 different facilities. What we found out with these 2 guys, these 2 different division managers at their facilities, they weren't spending any money from the safety bucket because they were negligent. They were expressing gross negligence because they wanted to pad for every dime they didn't spend. That went into their bonus at the end of the year. So their performance bonus, so they could go out and buy that big fancy sailboat, whatever. They were taking these material possessions and making that a priority over the people, their workers, and their safety. And that's not going to happen on my watch, because I'm going to tell you that. Not going to happen. I turn into Wolverine then. So I went before both of these division managers, submitted my report, told them what they need to do, not just need to do, but they have to do, because this is a directive from our president of our division. You have to do this. You don't have a choice in the matter. And I presented it in a very formal fashion, very professional, but again, you need to take care of your workers. This is what's going on. And Elaine, what do you think I got from both of them? It wasn't 2 fingers, but 1. Okay? That's what, yeah, granted, these are on different occasions. But after I presented my case, I'm presenting facts, details. I'm not presenting something that's an opinion or subjective. No, these are facts. This is what's happening. Again, all in line with preventing conflict, right? Because I'm talking to facts and things that they can't dispute. So how can you dispute a fact? We talk to the same thing and speak up, listen up, do we not? We talk to facts, and that when we see a coworker or whatever doing something unsafe, or we see an unsafe condition, we talk to facts. We don't go off on opinions and that, and we don't give them an opinion. We know, we cite procedures, we cite facts. And of course, you can't dispute that. But I did the same thing with them. I got the middle finger from both of them and a lot of folks' words. But coincidentally, the next day for each employee, for each manager, they were packing up their office and they were headed on out, looking from the outside in. They were both terminated with a combined experience of 63 years between the two of them. They were both terminated the next day by the president of our division, saying we are not going to tolerate this insubordination, your failure to want to make a safer workplace for our employees instead of being interested in your material possessions. No, we're going to let you go and make you an example for the rest of the company. It was time for a paradigm shift, and that's what happened. So again, speaking to facts, getting all the facts, building a business case to present, to say, hey, here's what's going on. This was nothing, again, nothing subjective. This was very objective. Could I have done anything different than I did? Did I handle it, you think, the proper way? And also, too, what kind of task does this lend itself to? Conflict.
Personnel.
Ego.
Personality, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Is there concerns about that? Anybody want to elaborate on that? Any personal experience with that? Okay. And then my last example, real life example of conflict resolution. PCAP.
Certainly not.
Of course, you will never know who this person is. Member of management. I had told member of management repeatedly, probably 5 or 6 times, that we needed to change this procedure, a certain procedure, a safety procedure, because there's a major issue we're not addressing there. And I'm the SME for this procedure as well. But I was told 5 or 6 times that no. We've gotten through this far successfully. That's never been an issue before. Never been an issue before. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Well, what do you think happened after 3 years of asking repeatedly that I need to change this procedure and get your buy-in on it? What do you think happened after 3 years?
It happened.
It happened. It happened, all right. Right? And yeah, it was frustrating. It was frustrating. But each and every time I went to talk to this member of management, I presented a case, a business case. Each and every time saying, hey, we need to get this done. This is what's going to happen. It's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And that was also talking to the experience that I had in the past from previous places. I know this is just it's gonna happen, man. It's just a matter of when. It's never happened here before. I've never seen it. The person also had a military background. Their military presence and training in our discussions. Okay, it was like brought up saying we did this in the military, and this is what happened. Oh, okay, we did that in the military, but this is a little bit different now. Okay, you're not in the military no more. This is what's going to happen. I'm telling you. So again, sticking to facts and details, and best practices too. Really talking to best practices, everything. That in a nutshell is what happened. And again, these are all conflicts that. Do you think were any of these conflicts actually started by me? Do you think they were started by me, initiated by me? Probably the last one. It wasn't necessarily a conflict, but I brought it up, which did end up in a conflict in the end. And he did right the wrong. and admitted that he was, that he made a mistake. He made a mistake. He had to suck it up a little bit, had to suck up his foolish pride, but he did. He admitted in the end that it was a mistake and he should have listened. But again, this whole time, I never let, out of all those three examples, I never let the situation get the best of me. That's one of the underlying messages here. You have to maintain composure because you, again, especially if you're in a leadership position, you never ever want, you got to step away. If you feel like you got to look at the triggers, look at your internal triggers, look at their, recognize those triggers internally. If you're getting upset or you want to give a negative response, don't do that. That is really key in this whole situation. Maintain your professional demeanor, your attitude. It goes a long ways. But that it goes not even just in leadership, but in any situation. You have a mug look on your face. Is that
Oh, I'm good.
okay? But what do you think, Kyle? What's your experience in that? What do you think about that? About the three examples overall. What do you take from it, from those three personal examples?
One of those three personal examples is just a matter of controlling your emotions so that you can control the situation.
Consider all you can control. The moment you lose control, you've lost the situation.
That's correct. We've had all of these classes. Water that you can't make.
Bingo. Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
Sums it up, but I don't know how to explain it.
What's your thoughts, Robert?
Back through my, it all goes down to the same thing. Your own composure. And I've had numerous times where I haven't. And I've had to take that opposing role of sucking up my pride and apologize. So whether I've got it wrong,
Right.
most of the times the conflicts, I was in the right as far as what needed to be expressed, but my ego got in the way. My personal feelings got in the way. And I had to have that conversation after the fact that, I was wrong. Right? I was wrong in how I approached it. I was wrong in how I handled it. That's painful.
It goes back to ego and pride and those things.
I'd rather have a broken bone inside my body than do that.
Yeah.
Have that conversation. And I know that's not going to be the last time it happens. Because you can go into these things, these tools, and have these conversations and they go your way, your way, your way. When that one time happens, it goes all out the door.
Yep, it does.
And you have to start from scratch again.
It's hard to rehearse every potential scenario,
Exactly.
is it not?
Even if it's the same scenario.
You can change. You're right. It's
Something tweaks.
the dynamic of the people
Something-
chemistry.
Something outside
Right.
in your life. Something your kids said, something your dogs did, set you up for the rest of the day. And the dog peed on the carpet again. And that ruins your whole day and it brings conflict
Yes.
because you get something.
Exactly. Excellent. Good.
You need to be constantly vigilant about yourself.
Exactly. So just for a second, let's talk about communications. We can prevent conflict just via communications, everyday communications, sending emails, texts, making phone calls. Everybody's heard about this one. Before sending an email, especially when it's dealing with, and you're in the heat of the moment, you say you receive a phone call, a text, or whatever from somebody, and it sets you off. The worst thing you can do is respond immediately, especially if you recognize you go to triggers again. You're realizing, hey, I am really ticked off. Okay, this is out of the norm for me. This isn't normal. What's your first impulse is to what? Lash out.
Yep.
So what do they always tell you to do before responding? Wait, right. So if you have an email you want to send out as a rebuttal or whatever, the best thing to do isn't to hit the send button right away. Maybe have a peer come in and review it and say, hey, that sounds pretty bad. It sounds like you want to rip their throat out. Okay, and it does happen.
I do.
Yeah, well, you
Did
do.
I express that by email?
No, we need to get those parts out.
Yeah.
But again,
Nicest way to
Permission
fix
for
it
forgiveness. Permission.
you.
Forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, but the same thing, it
Take that into
applies to it.
consideration.
But it applies to text messaging, it applies to phone calls, it really does. So you talk about communications, but sit on it. Don't let it get the best of you because it can come back and haunt you in a big way.
Oh, yeah, I've had to eat some crow over some emails.
It really is. And I personally lived it, and I have been guilty of that at times in my career where I've let the situation get the best of me, and it really escalated the conflict. Well, actually, where there was no conflict, it turned into a conflict and then escalated from there. It turned into an email war, and no, we both got called in and before the boss, and it was not a good situation. And I learned from that the hard way.
I never turn to email first because that's paper trail.
It is paper trail. Exactly.
I have this thing on my desk that my mom bought me. It's called a Buddha board, and it stands like this. And I don't know what kind of paper the board is, but then you have this kind of like a pen brush with water in the handle, and you can write or draw or whatever, and then it dries and disappears. So I can sit there and F you, I don't, go to hell, whatever, and just disappear. So I'm like, okay, all right, I feel better. I got it out of my system, and there's no paper trail. It disappeared.
So we talked about communication. How can you mitigate or prevent conflict with organizational skills? What are some examples?
Of what? I didn't hear that.
Okay, we talked about communication and how it lends itself to conflict or mitigating conflict depending on your style. Let's get into organization, because remember earlier I told you I pride myself on two things: communication and world-class organization and communication skills. How can world-class organization skills keep you out of hot water, can prevent conflict?
Information available.
Automatically lower the opportunity. Using the process to mitigate potential issues down the road before they ever happen. Have that conflict and figure out how to change it so you don't do it again.
Right.
I think happens regularly on site where we recognize a problem. Sometimes too late. Say, how can we fix it so we don't do this again? Pretty regular in work control, trying to figure out different ways to use programs to take the human error possibility out of our processes.
There you go.
Automate the system so that we don't have a problem.
Exactly.
And the opportunity to our employees to get in trouble.
Right. That's good. That's excellent. That's excellent. What is one of the things we do when we talk about safety-related incidents and follow up on that, and knowing that, okay, so this was lagging and we want to go to leading indicators, but what's one of the things we do to try to get to more of a leading indicator and being preventive? Documentation, but we also share lessons learned.
You have to document to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So you document, but you share those lessons learned. It goes back to the one of the things that I like to talk about is you can't manage something you don't see or hear about, right? But you want to share those with the workforce, share those with everybody, do a comprehensive 360, get everybody involved, share those lessons learned, so that way it's a tool in which to, a vessel in which to carry that message to everybody, so we won't potentially run into that situation again, whether it's a safety issue or a conflict or whatever. But those are things we use as tools to help prevent those things from happening. So again, communication, organization, how essential they are in the big picture.
Yeah, that clock is.
It's 4:09 right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Slows down in here. That's really all it is.
Elaine, do I give them a little break right now? Because I can finish out with my tips and everything, or do you want me to just go through this and then do a Q&A and then give them an up until 10 to take a break?
Yeah, Brendan, usually they take a break about 10, but I mean, ask them if they want to take one early. I'm okay with that.
Okay, would anybody need a break right now? Real quick, or would you like to just get this? I'm going into my last section, the last part of the presentation, which talks about my personal tips on what you can do to help mitigate or prevent, conflict. Do you want to go through that first, have a Q&A, and then take your break? It's up to you.
Good either way.
Good either way? Yeah. Okay, let's just finish it out. And then that way you can take the rest of the time after. We'll have Q&A. And I'm also going to be here till noon as well. When Lane gives her presentation part at 10, from 10 to noon, I'm going to be here to help field any questions or concerns as well that I might be able to relate to from experience too. So, but this one is okay. There's the fingers, Elaine, right there.
Gotcha.
Two fingers. Important tips to utilize when engaged in conflict and conflict resolution. Again, this isn't textbook, folks. Well, this is a little bit textbook because this is taken from snippets, bits, and pieces of the training that I've had at PCAP and throughout the years. But I think these are things that will really help. And again, this is just a sampling. There's more to it, and maybe after we're done here, maybe you can give me some more examples. Then I welcome that. But let me go through the concepts, ideas, tips for success from Brendan's point of view that can help you with conflict resolution, mitigate it or prevent it, period. So Sulu, speak up. Has everybody in here had Sulu training? Oh, you haven't had Sulu. Okay, well, when you get you in Sulu. Okay, well, I apologize about that, Kyle. But do you know what Sulu is though? Have you heard about it? Okay. So Sulu is a part of our PCAP safety culture now, moving forward until we take the place back to dirt. It's a program we've been rolling out to the entire workforce. I think we have about 90% of the workforce trained up thus far. So there's the missing people yet that we have to get to. But folks, it is a really good program. Did anybody actually sit in on the training when I gave the Sulu? Mine was a little bit, was very heartfelt, obviously. But it's a great tool designed for safety interactions. Keep in mind that Sulu, speak up, listen up, can also be used for non-safety related. It's kind of a model in which to follow in terms of conflict resolution or de-escalating a situation, potential situation. So again, Sulu, when you're the person speaking up to the person that's listening up, you want to speak to facts, to details, to procedures. Again, you don't want to cite opinions or anything like that that can lead to a potential argument. If you stick to the facts and everything, it's hard to dispute those things. And one of the things about Sulu is we want to, when we engage the person that's performing an unsafe act or in an unsafe condition, we want to express ourselves with a very sincere, passionate approach. We don't want to come off as being, hey, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that. No, we want to be very sincere, genuine about it, because we talk about brother and sister's keeper at PCAP. Let's embrace it. But again, that's one of the ways we can, approach a situation and keep it from, escalating. And let's see here. And again, the one important thing about Sulu that you're going to hear, Kyle, that we preach is, and you can do everything right in terms of presenting, speaking up, but again, you can't control what the listener is going to do. You don't know what kind of response you're going to get. Hopefully it's a favorable response, but sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, it might not be. So we have to be prepared for that. But again, we can't let them get the best of us. All we can do is our part and do it in a professional manner. That's all we can do. I like this one. This is one of my favorite quotes, and I've used this my entire career, but it's true. One cannot manage what they don't see or hear about. You're a manager, supervisor out there, Robert, which you're out there on the floor. If you don't lay out the expectations and the details and that, do you expect your workers to succeed, or are they going to succeed, or are they going to fail?
Go back to the first part of your question.
Okay. So you can't manage what you don't see or hear about. So if you don't lay out the expectations and give details to your workers and on a specific task, are they going to fail, or are they going to succeed?
Depends on their level of experience.
It's true.
All things being equal, and I'll bring top performers down to the middle, I would expect myself to be a little more involved in oversight.
Okay.
Not so much bird dogging, but asking them questions on going okay, you guys need anything, things like that.
Okay.
Higher performers, I don't need to do that.
Okay.
I give them the work, they go to work. I give them the work, they go to work, they come back, they know if they've got problems, they do that. I can't do that with the lower performer guys. I've got to say, I've got all your materials ready to pick up at the warehouse. Get this back to me when you're done. As soon as you're done, get your summaries written up and get it back to me before 1 o'clock. If it's not back by 1, I'll need to know what happened, or I'll come back and check on you. Some things I need to be more involved.
What principle that I talked about earlier did Robert just summarize? I talked. 1-minute manager principle. He just gave you a practical example of 1-minute manager is what he just did. Exactly is what you just did. Sit. Excellent. Seriously, that is fantastic.
And here's the thing, and I have to keep preaching this. I got this basically from one of our managers who's no longer with us in defensive arena. Things. He put out this list of supervisor expectations, and every time, and it's just a general thing of HR policy things. Be on time. Be fit for duty. Don't have time card issues. No safety issues. Don't go negative on PTO. It's like 30 little bullet points. And new hires that come in, if nobody sat down and talked to them, I'll sit down and talk with them.
Excellent.
And I'll go through this thing. Do you have any questions on that? Because you really shouldn't. All this should have been covered in training or your hire brief. What questions do you have for me? What do you expect from me as your supervisor?
1-minute manager, right
But
there.
I have to leave it there. Really, I mean, I'll reiterate things throughout the course of time. But if they don't bring problems to me, and I find out at 3 o'clock that they couldn't get a job done, well, that's kind of on me for not checking on earlier why it's not done. But if they had problems at 8 o'clock and didn't tell me until 3 o'clock, it's even more painful if it's the high performers.
So Robert just brought up something else too.
Oh, no.
There was a buzz, and no, it's good. He says they bring me problems. What can we do instead of bringing problems, what should we really be doing? If it's the worker and they're doing things right, what should we be doing? Bringing solutions to him, not problems.
Well, and that's what I tell them.
Yeah, it's true. But if you want to talk about conflict resolution, one way you can help avoid conflict is bring solutions to somebody, not just problems. That you hear that a lot today, but it's very true. You know, come ready, come prepared. It goes back to communication and organization skills, you know, having those things. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Sometimes you don't have.
No,
Sometimes
you don't.
It's really just not a part of your thought process, and other
Right.
times, some people just don't do that.
No, and you're right, Kyle, absolutely.
A lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, no, it's.
Right.
But I think,
I need you to fix this.
but I think it's just become so, people get so complacent that some people have that ability, but just don't, because I'm not gonna say they're lazy, but it's just their mindset. It's part of the cultural beliefs where they come from. Oh, you know, that's your job, whatever. No. Let's try to bring those solutions. Again, I agree with you. Not everybody's capable of doing that or having that train of thought, you know, but there are a lot of people out there that just don't want to do it.
Right. Well, there's nothing more frustrating, but, you know, I did the 105 changeover and now I'm doing this 4.2 changeover. And there's nothing more frustrating than sitting in one of the meetings with my core group. And I have one individual who I will not name that all they do is, oh, we can't do it that way. And this is why. And he spends like 10 minutes on why we can't do it that way. But I never hear, okay, if we can't do it that way, how can we do it? You know, if you just like, we can't do it that way, can't do it that way, and this is why we can't do it that way. And I'm like, okay, help us get to how we can do it so that we meet all these expectations of yours in your department.
It's like you just hit it right on the head, because buzzwords like can't, wouldn't, shouldn't are all triggers telling you that that person has already defeated the situation even before it began. There is no solution to it. They've accepted failure. The word should be can, I will. That's what you want to hear. Again, those things can help avoid conflict as well, especially if it has a positive spin on it. But when you hear can't, wouldn't, shouldn't, bingo, the red light should come on and say, okay, this is a potential for a conflict, you know, potential. So let's, again, go back to buzzwords and triggers. That's really important in this whole process as well.
So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they used to work for me, and this person kind of, I'm not sure, in a snarky kind of way, you know, they said, you know, you go to your manager for help because you got a problem, and they say things like, bring me a solution, right? I can't remember exactly how the person said it, but I knew the person was talking about me, right? And I said, yeah, that's me. You're right. You knew how you wanted it to look. I'm certain you did. Why did you never talk about how you wanted it to look? I think they were just too narrow-minded. We weren't in the talking. They didn't work for me anymore. But you know, it's like you knew what you wanted to see. You knew how you wanted it to happen. You just wanted me to change it because you weren't happy.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I handled it right. Maybe my approach was never right with this individual, but that was it created a lot of contention. And come to find out, it was why. They wanted answers. They wanted me to fix it. They didn't want.
They didn't want to participate.
Yeah, they didn't want to participate. I think the biggest ones was always our training of employees sucks. Well, you're in a position to change that.
Yeah,
You really are. You're
Exactly.
part of this position.
Mhm.
And I'm doing everything I can to change this, but you're not on board because it sucks.
And in that, well, maybe not in that instance, when I have my little talk with them, I say, I know things that you don't know. You know things that I don't know. If we have issues or you're having conflict out in the field and can't get something done, come to me. I may not have the answer, but let's work on it together. You've got as much ownership in this as I do. I try to empower them with that to come up with their solution. And I may not have the answer, he may not have it, but somewhere on this plant of 1,000 people, we can find an answer.
But, you know, it's like what she said, that won't work. We can't do that. We're still accomplishing something. How can we accomplish it?
Right, exactly. And that's the problem with me being the campaign manager. I don't have, the reason I have these people in my meetings is because they're the experts. You know, I have the maintenance experts, I have waste experts, I have safety experts, I have all these engineering experts. And it's, you know, okay, so we can't do it this way. How can we do it? Bring me your expertise. That's why you're in here. I'm just herding cats.
Yep.
Yep.
The distillation. Accountability, ownership, stakeholder. I hear what you're saying. I like those words because that's what we need to, that's the mindset we need to embrace is, yeah, you know, it's going to take a complete team effort. It's not just falling on one person. Like we say, safety is everybody's responsibility. It isn't just the safety reps, it's everybody's responsibility. And likewise, anything we do in the plant, tasks or whatever, it's a stakeholder process. It's an accountability thing. We're empowering everybody, and we need to make sure everybody understands that. Everybody has a voice. How many people in here have had crucial conversations? And there we go. Good class. I think it was great. I think it was a great class. I learned a lot from that. What are some key points to crucial conversations to setting the tone and getting best results and preventing conflict, avoiding conflict? What are some of the things that were preached in this?
Just keeping that person from the fight or flight mode, right?
Right.
Like you've talked about sticking to the facts, staying on point.
Mm-hmm.
I had mixed feelings on that class. I wasn't a huge fan.
Bless you.
Thank you.
But that was the premise of it. It was
Yeah. No.
keeping it in a neutral to where you're participating, you're listening, you're finding a solution or an understanding.
Speaking from the heart.
Mhm.
Speaking from the heart. Again, yeah, you're talking to facts. Stay middle of the road. You know, there's the people that have a tendency to stay silent, and then there's the people that have a tendency to go to violence. And what do we want to do? What if we're the commensurate professional? What should we be doing? We should be staying middle of the road, citing facts, procedures, details. Avoid ambiguity. You know, don't give the person that you're talking to, don't give them an in, if you will. Don't give them any grounds, any wiggle room. Just center the road. But be professional about it, be courteous. Yeah, it goes back to Sue and everything else. There's a formula here. There's a commonality between all these concepts and these principles, these programs that we're talking about.
I watched a good one the other day, you know, because you can do all of that. You can present your facts, but you also have to listen to the other person's point of view. And you have to address it. If they have concerns, you need to address their concerns also and not just brush them aside. You know, that way they know you're listening to them.
Bingo.
And
Yes.
you're thinking about what they're saying. You're just not ignoring them.
You're right. And that's a big thing is because we hear how many times have we heard that out in the plant or no matter where you're at that, hey, I've told this person about it, but they don't say anything or don't do anything, we don't follow up on it. And then what happens to the person that is the one talking about it and wanting something done? Then their morale goes right down the tubes, right? You're right. Bring it full circle. You know, bring a notepad with you out in the field, write it down, show them that you're taking notes on it and not just trying to commit it to memory, not compartmentalizing it, write it down. do those things, but bring it back full circle. That whether it's right, wrong, and different for an answer, at least you're getting back with them and showing them that, yeah, you do care, you listen to them. That goes a long ways. That goes a long ways. It does. And it takes everything to build trust, right? It takes everything, but it only takes one instance to lose everything. So building that, gaining that trust takes time. Here's a big one. Never attack one's character, only their behaviors. So, you don't want to approach somebody and in any situation, no matter what, say, hey, you're a jerk. You are so stupid. You don't have a bachelor's degree.
You lied to me, right? You're a liar.
You lied to me. You're a liar. Yeah. No, don't ever attack one's character. That's the worst thing you can do in any situation. Only their behaviors. You only attack or go after behaviors. Any classic examples of that? Anybody seen or heard or actually done themselves?
Well, I wasn't even doing it, but I've been in a conversation where the person implied that I was lazy.
I apologize to you for that, Kyle.
That's the wrong thing to say to a country boy from Rye. I can tell you that.
You can tell me I'm stupid. You can tell me that I was born under a rock. I don't care what you won't ever call me lazy.
Yeah.
I can't think of very many things that piss me off more. Made it pretty clear, very nicely.
Good.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Good.
But, yeah, no, they happen, and I don't think that person intentionally tried to make it sound like they were calling me lazy. But the way they explained the situation,
Right.
they could have done better. And they realized right in that moment, because they backtracked, said, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Not what I meant. And I'm sorry you took it that way.
Sure.
But I think that's a good example.
Yeah. No, it's excellent. Very good. Being in management through the course of my career, I've been called some real good ones, and obviously I shared a few with you. But yeah. So embrace world-class organization and communication skills, and it's all about continuous improvement integration. If you think you're the best and you think you've gone as far as you can go, then you've defeated yourself. So you always look at being dynamic and always being willing to change and value opinions and being open-minded. There's a lot to be said about that, because the world's continuously evolving. We're dealing with Generation X and this generation, so cultures change, mindsets change. We got to evolve with that. Doesn't mean you have to dispel with what you believe in, but you have to be dynamic, be willing to change. Don't ever think you know it all. I had a machine shop coordinator at General Motors tell me, he said, Brendan, if you learn 3 new things every day, by the time you die, you're going to be a smart man. So there's a lot of merit to that. I like what I bring with me, a lot of what the old timers used to tell me, and they used to tell me too. Anybody in here know what the 7 P's stand for? You ever hear the 7 P's?
Mm-hmm. Just can't think of it right now.
Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. I said P. That's not really what they told me, but it's true. Organization. If you're ahead of the game and you're doing those things. So remember the 7 Ps. That's stuck with me since my GM days, and I've embraced that. Again, we're all different. We all come from different walks of life, but again, these are just little tidbits I'm throwing out at you that have been successful, have led to success for me. Well, I say success, but have kept me out of most conflict situations, at least for me, going my Wolverine side. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You said it. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. Listen, be an active listener. Listen to the person that's talking. Don't go into the conversation with this canned response, because we're all notorious for that, are we not? We get engaged in a conversation and they're talking to this subject matter and we're like, I already know what I'm gonna say. I already know it. Yeah, been in this situation 1,000 times. No, that's the wrong mindset. Listen to the person. Be professional, be courteous. There's a lot to be said about that. Be an active listener. Agreed? And I think that is actually, oh, that was tied in with that. Okay. Can anybody tell me or give me any other important tips to utilize when engaged in conflict and conflict resolution from your experience? This was just from mine, a summary of mine. And there's more that I had. I just gave you a sampling. Can anybody tell me any others? I'm sure you have some. I know I didn't get them all.
Well, there's a generational difference when you're dealing with conflict. You know, those people of a certain age, we're used to, you know, tell us what to do, be gruff to do it, and we go do it, right?
Mhm.
If we did something wrong, tell us what we did wrong.
Right.
We'll try to fix it. The younger generations, the millennials and the Gen Zs that are coming up, they
Why?
want to know why. They want to know the reason.
Why?
You just can't say because I said. They want to know the reasons behind it. And in most situations, if it's not life and death, it won't kill you to take that time to reason with them and explain why your method of doing it is better or
Right.
is the way it needs to be done.
Mhm.
And you can go through this conflict and listen to their concerns and address their concerns, and they need that. We just want to be told what we want to do and tell us what we did wrong and then just leave us the heck alone.
Yeah.
Right, Robert?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I find myself right in the middle of that. I enjoy having a supervisor or manager that says, here's your job. Make it happen. You didn't meet the expectations. Here it is. At the same time, something I don't exactly understand, I want to know, how do we come around to this is how we're going to do it? Because I have an idea. Is it something that's been tried before? I think there's value in middle ground with that.
Right. So the thing is, the whole point is you have to, it's not one size fits all with this conflict resolution.
Exactly.
You have to tailor it to, and as a leader or a manager, you have to know your people.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
know how they're going to respond. Know that I'm not going to be able to respond to my daughter the same way I respond to Robert,
Mhm.
right?
I would hope not.
Well, a good
But-
bump on the bridge of the nose usually does well with her.
Based on our age, I'd like to interject this before I forget. Knowing your people, I think the biggest problem I've had with in this realm of conflict is that you know the people know the work, but then they'll revert into that why. You can't say because I said so, because you know they've done it in the past. Trying to get around that has been an area of contention. And then when you get around that, giving them the same work the next month or quarter or whatever the cycle of rotation is for this particular job, they revert back to taking it on and getting the job done. Then 2 or 3 cycles later, why? 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 Didn't we have this conversation 6 months ago? Yes. Why? Well, then why are we having it again?
But then again, you don't know what their mindset is and what they have been.
My mindset is, why are you being an idiot?
True,
Playing this game.
true. And there are
Why-
obstructionists, you
Why
know.
are you trying to puff your chest up in front of everybody when you did it last month?
Just
We
no problem.
So,
got the paperwork to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a little bit like Kyle, I'm kind of in the middle, but I also think, and I'm not saying you guys don't listen at all, but I'm sure there are supervisors or leaders who don't. And sometimes when they come up with a why, it could be a very valid reason why. Like, so I talked to a lot of buyers, cause I'm at Jetway, and we just had a couple very valid whys come up, and nobody's even considering thinking of an answer, like why this close to the end of operations are we going to order $600,000 worth of batteries? I don't know what kind of batteries. Huh?
That's insurance.
Why?
We can't do anything to fix it.
Our UPS failed for the APB.
UPS.
Okay, so there is a
There
reason.
is a-
Steve.
Our
Okay.
backup.
We went through the
And
gloss.
that's what we didn't, and that's what, like, obviously they're not AAA batteries. We were trying to figure out what kind of
They're
batteries.
900 to 1,000
So
plus
for
dollar.
UPS.
They're for the UPS. We did our GLOP,
Global loss of power.
our
Right, I was-
loss of power. These diesels came up that because the APB UPS had some bad batteries or some low batteries, it failed to support the
Load on
critical,
SDT.
the critical power, which means the FCS, the program, the system that controls everything, didn't tell the diesel generators, yes, we need you to take this load. And so the diesels didn't see that. And they're like, okay, we don't have a load to take. We're going back down. And we felt the glop.
See, so there's a very valid why.
But, and the buyers aren't there in the plant to hear that. Everybody in the plant is hearing it.
But that's what I'm saying though, is the buyer's like, why are we buying $600,000 worth of batteries this close to operations? But they don't know that, so they kind of like, oh, well, it doesn't need my, immediate attention, is literally what they feel like. They're just like, oh, well, I can do that tomorrow or
Okay.
whatever.
I'm the one talking to
My
them.
question to that is, why does it matter? I'm ordering $1 million worth of batteries. It's not like I'm ordering $20 worth of batteries.
Well,
People do their job better when they know the why.
well, we'll call that a company difference.
Okay, so then I know that my job when I get to work on Monday is to make sure that my buyer, Teresa
Integrity.
Haggerty, and her boss know why this is important.
Because, and then the other one
Because
is
they're not getting it from their management.
$3,000 worth of rubber gloves or nitrile gloves. That's a lot of gloves.
I think when you have questions like that, if you're not asking your supervisor for them, just hold on, give me just a second. Have a question and you ask your supervisor and your supervisor doesn't know the answer, but it's something like that, it's inconsequential to some aspect, but it makes a difference to you to understand why this is such a huge priority. If your supervisor doesn't know the answer, ask your supervisor. If you can ask someone else, because somebody will give you the answer. There's 600
But
people
that's
outside right now that answer that
But
question.
that's the problem. And I've even gone up as far as Kim, because they go to their supervisor, like, "So why are we ordering this?" And Joe's like, I don't know, just do it. Because Joe's not gonna go talk to an Amentum person. Especially, no, Mackenzie will not, no. He
But
doesn't even
his
like to
boss,
talk to
Jason
his-
LaRue, knows.
So what I'm
So
hearing,
I had to go to LaRue.
are we not, is it going back though to maybe not properly training people and laying out the proper expectations? Is
No.
it?
We're not one team, one
I think
mission.
it's a disconnect.
Communication. The people that down at Jetway are segregated,
Disconnected.
disconnected, whatever you want to say, however you want to put it from the rest of the plant, but they still provide us with vital support. But they aren't fed the right information. They don't know what's going on out at the plant.
Communication gapping, back to communication
Mhm.
gapping, more of that. So
Right.
we talked about it earlier. Okay, so we're in a Q&A. I know we're getting pretty close. Well, we're actually in a break time, but does anybody have any question and answer? I can tell you, you've got a fantastic group as far as your interaction goes. And I think we've answered a lot of questions. You had a lot of We had a lot of answers along the way. With that being said, though, do you have anything else right now before we take a break? You're an excellent group, very interactive. Really appreciate that because it makes my job a lot easier.
We've been doing this for a while.
No, you're good. Yeah, I know. I feel comfortable because you're my PCAT family, so no, thank you. Yeah, take a break.
Thank you.
After we're done, we need to plan our first class reunion. First in a year.
That's when they want us to all walk up in front of everybody.
I went to my 35th, and that's the only one I've ever been to.
This is my 25th year. And
No.
I've been
It's
to
my
one.
10th year, and that was it.
No, sorry, 25th.
Yeah, this is my 25 year.
Yeah.
And I think we've only had one reunion and I wasn't at it, so.
Well, I went to the 25th because I was overseas for the 20th, and that was the big one. And then there were like maybe 13 people at the 25th one.
Elaine, when do you want us back?
Hey, when would you like us back?
Usually they take about a 15-minute break.
Okay.
10:05?
So 5 after.
10:05.
Brendan, thank you again. Great job.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of, I mean, I knew what I wanted to say, but I was relying heavily on the class participation. To me, that's where you really get into some good discussion and examples. And I think that really helps everyone as a whole when we can start discussing certain subjects and kind of bringing everything together. I had an idea, and that's why I wanted to get kind of, I said I wanted to make sure that I was hitting on some subject matter that was a little bit sensitive. It's not overstepping the boundaries, but we gotta break away from that and be comfortable about talking about things and be open. And again, it goes back to open conversation and being very candid with one another. Again, it goes back to setting people up for success. Are we covering all the details and talking to really what the expectations are. But when I was hearing Robert talk down here, I got really excited because he was citing 1 minute manager all the way. And I use a lot of that 1 minute manager principle, have always used it in my management style. So it's nice to hear the differences in the opinions and the backgrounds but how it all comes together. And again, I think, there is one commonality. There's commonality to everything. I was saying to all the programs, the processes, and talking to best practices. And I know your background and you have that GM background too. And so, yeah, no, it was fun. I enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this a lot. But I love participation. I'm a hands-on guy. Very much.
Mm-hmm. Great.
No,
Well,
anything
let's
else
see.
in the future, I'd be glad to help out with. Seriously, I love this stuff.
Well, actually, I was going to give you a heads up. In later on in the slides, there is like I think 7 slides on communication,
Oh, yeah.
and you were hitting on those slides. So I might just skim through those since you kind of highlighted those already.
Mm-hmm.
But no, great job, and I think we're good. Feel free though, as I'm, talking to add or provide an example or whatever. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you for letting me be here. Seriously.
Oh my goodness, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. It's my first time speaking in front of a college, in a college class. I went to school for college. Well, except when I was a student in college. Go ahead.
I'm going to take a quick break, so I'll see you back.
Thanks, Elaine.
Elaine, can you please leave your camera on so that I can get the all set up?
Yeah, I'm just going to step away for a minute. I'll leave the camera on.
Okay, great.